Hey friends, it's Scott Giroux, and in this video, I'm going to be continuing building the task scheduler that we've been building using the Power drag and drop component. And we're going to be adding in the ability to persist it in the database, as well as the ability to use different templates between drop zones. So stick around. Thank you so much for all of your comments and encouragement. It's great to hear how you've been using the Power drag and drop component to build some really creative solutions. And so we're going to be looking at building out a little bit more of that solution. And so we're going to end up with something like this, so you can move items around and they will then be stored back in the database, so that when we click the save button, that will then be committed to the database, and so we can move around to a different screen and not lose the items. Also, you can see that we've got a different template here compared to the main template here. Okay, so here we are in the app that we left off in the previous video. Now, if you've not seen that, then I highly recommend you looking back at that, or maybe reviewing it. But I've made a few little tiny adjustments. So like, for example, I've added in a save button and it doesn't do anything at the moment. I've also added in a little refresh button, and these are using the Creator Kit icons. I've also added in this little view button. So if I run this and click on that and go over, you can see here all I'm doing is I'm showing the tasks, who it's assigned to, and the date, which allows us to kind of see what's going on, make sure that we've made the right updates. But if you remember where we left it before, I can move these things around. I can drag them, which is great. I can also move my people around. But what doesn't happen is that none of this gets persisted into the database. But also, if I move this person, it's not going to move the task with that person. There's no linkage between the person and the tasks. And indeed, if I go back over to that list and then go back again, notice that what's happened is that they've all been reset, because the state is all handled inside of this drag drop component. There's no state that's being managed inside of the actual collections. So in order to do that, when we drop something into this drop zone, we need to update that back in collection so that it will refresh. But also, say we wanted to, and this is something I've been asked about a lot. Now, if we look at this master drop zone and we look for the template here, and if we look at that template, and this is what we've got at the moment. Say I wanted to have a different template, right? Maybe a different background color for the different drop zones you put it into. At the moment, if I take that template, and if we look at the day slot template where we left it off before, and let's get that template. And at the moment, it's exactly the same. But so say I wanted it to be white when we drop it. And I also wanted it to have this kind of edited flag here to say that when I've moved it between a particular drop zone or moved it back to the unassigned, it showed this little asterisk. That means that every time I move it, it needs to re-render, okay? What we do is, if we look at this and I move it, you can see it's not doing that, right? It's not changing to be white because there's nothing happening. It's not re-rendering. If I refresh this, also nothing's happening because there's no kind of change that's being happened to the actual collection that then causes a re-render. So if we look at the functions that we currently have, where it's load, let's look at the load tasks, okay? I've made a few little optimizations since the last video. Really, all it's doing is this load tasks function now is loading the people, it's loading the day slots, and it's loading the individual tasks that are going to be put into each of those day slots. So it's the same functionality that we've previously looked at. The load people is just simply going to do a clear collect on the people, so it's going to refresh the collection that holds the people, and it's going to just grab all of the contacts. And it's also adding in the zone, so it's going to be located in the people zone. And it's obviously got the image and the initials that we looked at before. The day slots is exactly the same as we had before, where it's constructing this zone combination here, which is the day followed by the person, which allows us to have that unique ID for the zone of each of those day slots. Because you remember before we've got our master zone here on the right, and all the other drop zones is a combination of all of these drop zone IDs for all these different day slots. It allows us to then manage a unique ID. So when I drop it, I could discover the day that it's been dropped in and or the person it's been dropped in. So if we go back to that load task, and then the last is just simply we're loading in the tasks and we're adding in the zone. This time we are calculating the zone based on the current assigned to. So we're saying if it's blank, if the assigned to is blank, we are setting the zone to be unassigned. Whereas if it's not, we are going to create this zone ID by taking the day, making this the integer, which is the number of days from the start date. And that's the first part. And then we're putting in the GUID of the contact in the second part. So what this means is when we load in these tasks from Dataverse, so it could be SharePoint, it will make sure that it's assigned to the correct zone. But of course, all of them at the moment are unassigned. That's why they're all appearing in the right-hand side. Now, notice that each of these load blocks are wrapped in an if. So if load people, there we're going to load the people. If load day slots, and if load tasks, they're just simply flags that allow us to define what needs loading. Now, if we look at the on visible of the first screen, you can see that we've got the update context here, which is going to say, okay, we'll set all load people to true, day slots to true, tasks to true. So the first time that we call the load tasks function, it's going to load everything. But when we click the refresh button, if we look at the action here, well, then it's going to do a reload, and we need to then define, if we look at the function reload, we need to say that actually we don't want to load the people, we only need to load the day slots, and we only need to load the tasks because the people we're assuming haven't changed. So then we make a call to load tasks to then go and load that data. Obviously, there are different ways that you could achieve the same thing, but what I've tried to do here is just put all of that code in the same place to make it easy for us to work on. So let's make sure that when we drop something, we capture the event and we make that update to that collection that stores all these tasks, which will then cause a re-render. So in order to do that, I'm going to go over to my functions here. I'm going to add in a button. So remember, we're using the container to sort of simulate having a group of functions, and that container is set to be invisible. So it just makes it easy to manage all of our functions. So task on drop, it needs to go and get all of the current items inside the unassigned task. Because remember, the unassigned tasks is a drop zone, which is our master drop zones. Remember the concept of a master drop zone and the child drop zones. The master drop zone is the only drop zone that gets all the events assigned to it. And this special current items property holds this current state. So remember when we moved between screens, the current state got reset. That means the current item is being reset. So whilst ever we're on the same screen and we haven't updated the input collection, this current items is going to maintain the state of that drop zone. And we've got two properties. The first one is has moved zone. So that tells us whether or not it's been moved between two different zones. But also we've got another one which is has moved position. So in the case of the people later on, we'll need to look at if it's been moved position and respond to that. And what we're going to do is for each of those items that have moved zone, we're going to patch that call tasks, and we're going to look up the particular task that we need to patch. And we use this special item ID. And I remember from our previous video, we set the item ID to be the task ID from Dataverse. This item ID will always be the task ID in Dataverse. So we can look up from our cold tasks using this project task, which is the unique identifier. And then that's the one we need to patch. And the two things that we want to update here are the assigned to and the due date. So what we do here is we say, okay, well, the assigned to, we say, okay, well, if the zone is going to be unassigned, then we set the assigned to be blank. Whereas if it's not, we want to use the zone data. And what we're doing is we're splitting on the pipe on that vertical bar. So we're getting the second part of that, which gives us the GUID of the person that we need to assign it to. And then likewise for the due date, if it's unassigned here, so it's been moved into the unassigned zone, we're going to assign a blank date. Otherwise, we're going to use the first part of that zone data to grab the number of days away from the start date, which is why we're using this add days. Okay, what we're doing is that you can see here, what we're taking is the zone, and we are splitting the zone on that pipe, which gives us those 2 bits of data that allows us to then decide which day it is and which person it is. So that function task on drop that we've got there. So we go to the master drop zone here and search for on drop. There it is. And we just need to make sure that we call that function. So we're going to call the function task on drop. There it is. So when that now happens, we can move that across there. And actually, you immediately see what's happening is that it's changing the call tasks, it's mutating the call tasks, and it's updating that modified flag, which is the other thing that it does inside that task on drop. If you look at the last bit there we go, we've got this edited to be true, so that the little asterisk gets shown. And because we're changing the input collection, that causes a re-render, which is really cool. And therefore it uses the new template to display it as white. Now, if I move it back again, it's gone back to blue. So that's the first part of the puzzle. The second part of the puzzle, obviously, is we need to now save that into Dataverse so that we've persisted this, because whilst I can now move to another screen here and we've got the assigned to, if I move back again here, it's now preserved it because the state is in the collection, which is really, really good. It means that we don't lose it between screen navigates. But if I refreshed, it's not actually going to come back from Dataverse. So I'm going to create another function. So by adding in another these buttons, I'm going to call this function save tasks. And if we go to the on select of this, let's put this in. So what we're doing now is we're going to patch the project tasks, because that is the Dataverse table that stores all these tasks. And we'll take the call tasks where edited is true. So it's only going to be the ones that have moved around that have got that asterisk against them. And we will only patch these 3 columns. So you need obviously the project task ID, because that's the column that will identify in Dataverse with the unique identifier, and then the due date and the assigned to. And then lastly, what we can do is we can then set the edited to be false. So the asterisk will now be removed. So if we take that save task, we will, in our little save button there, let's make on change there, say select function save tasks. There it is. Let's have a look at what that does. So we'll click save tasks. So you get the little ants marching across the top, which means it's now connecting to Dataverse. And now all of the asterisks have now disappeared because we've patched it, which has caused the re-render of these drop zones. But most importantly, if I make some more changes like this, and if I refresh this, it now resets it because our data has been updated in Dataverse. So we've got all of that state now being backed by Dataverse, not just in memory. So this is awesome. The last piece of the jigsaw is, at the moment, let's put some more tasks in for Paul Cannon, and let's put some more tasks in for Rene here, and we'll save that. So what we need to make sure is that when we move Rene, if we move Rene and Paul, you see I'm swapping those 2 around, the tasks in the actual grid here are not moving. And that is because the actual slots here are not being modified, right? We need to now modify the order in which these slots have been assigned to this collection. And then that will cause the re-render in the correct order. So in our master zone for the people, because I remember in our last video we talked about the fact that we've got 2 different drop zones. We've got our master drop zone for our tasks and our master drop zone for our people. So in the on drop event of this, we will need to call another function. So let's add in another button here. And we're going to call that person on drop. And in the on drop event of our person collection here, we'll just simply call that. So person on drop. So let's implement that functionality. So let's go to the on selective here. Let's put this in. And all we're doing here is simply setting a new context variable called load day slots in order to true. And then we're going to make a call to load tasks. But of course, we've got no functionality to respond to load day slots in order, because if you go into load tasks, we've just got this standard behavior to load day slots, which is going over for each of the people in the collection to load those day slots. So it's just loading the day slots in the order of the people in the initial collection. So we need to add some more functionality to load it in the new order. We can do that by putting this new bit of functionality in. So this is essentially the same as the other one, except for we are only going to do this if we got load day slots in order. And rather than loading based on the collection of people, this time we're going to load based on the state of the people. So each of these current items now will have been reordered based on the position that they've been dragged to. And so if we iterate over those people, when we look up against cold people using the item ID, it will be the item ID of the new state of that person. So let's have a look at if that works or not. So let's grab Paul Cannon here and swap with Rene. There we go. We can now see the items moving back and forward. So Rene's task, and if I move Rene to the up here, all Rene's tasks are moving. And that's because it's mutating again. The cold tasks are being mutated, and that's causing that re-render. Nice. That's really good. So, we can now move all these different tasks in, but let's say I didn't want to allow multiple tasks in each of these items here, these day slots. Maybe we only allow one item in each of those day slots. Well, we can do that because the master drop zone has got a property called maximum items in zones. In a similar way to this, the concatenation of all of the zones of the day slots, we can pop that in the same kind of the idea here. But rather than putting the zone ID, I can just put the number of items. So let's just say we only want one item in each of these, allow each of these drop zones to have one. But the first one is always going to be the master zone. So you can say -1, and that will specify you can have as many items. We're not limiting the number of items in that first drop zone, which is the master one. So I now run this and let's just reset this. And so let's pop that like that. And now it's not allowing me to drag into that. It's only allowing a single item per slot, which is cool. And the last thing I'm going to do is let's just go into the master template here. So I can say, let's say rotate anti-clockwise or clockwise large, and run that. So as I drag it, it's noticing it sort of looking like I'm kind of moving it around. Maybe large is perhaps a little bit too large for your liking. So you might make it small, kind of a little bit more subtle, like that. There we go. So it kind of looks like it's being dragged around, which is pretty awesome. And that also allows me to scroll up and down by, moving to the position where it causes the scroll. So yeah, we've basically got a fully fledged scheduling board. I mean, you might want to commit that position of the people that you drag to Dataverse using the same technique, so that when you next load it up, you get them in the right order, or you may want to have some grouping or anything like that. And so you could even build something like the Teams Shifts application with scheduling of different people, with grouping of each of the different people inside of those schedule groups. So in the next video, we're going to look at how to make this a little bit more accessible, because obviously some people may not be able to drag and drop things. You may be using the keyboard, so you want to be able to kind of tab around on and have icons on each of these items here, and so you'll be able to then go and edit that and then assign a particular date and a particular person without having to drag and drop it. So if you found this video or any of the other videos useful, please subscribe and like. That would be great. So do you think that drag and drop should be something that's part of Power Apps out of the box? And if you do, what do you think it would look like? Would it look like this component or would it look different? Please let me know in the comments. And if there's indeed any features you'd like adding to this component, I'd love to hear from you. But until the next video, friends, cheers.